How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here this Open Line Friday, 877-973-7425. Text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, so much more. If you text the word recipe, singular, not plural, recipe, to 33777, you can get the s'mores Rice Krispie treat recipe. And we'll be reviving the list here. I'll start sending out regular recipes, and in the run up to the Thanksgiving holiday season, I'll resend the guide I prepared a couple of years ago with all the recipes, how I do my turkey, breakfast for family visiting, pie recipes. And yes, it is true, I am working on a cookbook as my next project. More on that later, I suppose. Also, and this actually came up last night with some friends, I am going to do another Not Safe for Radio show. We want to be able to get the tickets going for sale for the holiday season so you can give gifts to family. It'll be in January. I will get you details quickly so that you'll be able to get those tickets, because the last time it sold out in 6 hours. And we're in a larger space. I think my assistant told me it was the Roxy, which is at the Battery where the Braves play, the TP, it's just outside the gates of the TP. So we're moving it north out of the perimeter, closer to where the main listening audience for my flagship station is. It's going to be a great time. There's a hotel there, great restaurants. More details on that. Just stay tuned. Rarely this happens on occasion. This rarely happens. So Don needs to know. Don is on hold. Don is a caller. Rarely does it happen that my call screener tells me you really should take this phone call. Rarely do I start a segment with a phone call, but I am told reliably by my producer that Don is worth talking to. And Don, I need you to know before I hit this button and people hear your voice, that your performance will determine whether or not my call screener gets fired headed into the weekend. So you better be a good call, Don. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Thank you for taking my call, Mr. Erickson. And I was going to compliment your call screener. You already did that. He was excellent, very professional.
No, don't say nice things. We don't like to say nice things about him. It gives him a big ego.
The reason for the call, sir, is I'm ex-Coast Guard, and I just was in disagreement with your statement about half an hour ago regarding not knowing what was happening, not definitive information regarding whether or not these individuals that are being taken out were drug runners. Pete Hexas could be causing a problem for the president. Your call screener did explain a little bit more thorough as to where you may have been going with this, but I wanted to refute that, stating in 1981, my vessel stationed out of Red Brier Beach, we set a record for our size, 95-foot patrol boat, for the most seizures for our size at the time. We were also involved with the Cuban flotilla, 1980. We were the first vessel, as in the first vessel involved with that Muriel Bay fiasco, but that's a conversation for another day. We were able to determine, bobbing around in heavy seas, boats that were bringing drugs without much trouble, not necessarily even the cigarette boats is what we called them at the time. Those are the power boats that can outrun cutters. They can outrun most vessels. Now, we've updated since then, and the Navy and the Coast Guard have boats that can keep up with them. But back then, we were using our eyes and radar with all that's available now, technology-wise. Okay, there is no doubt that proof, if we changed administrations, there is no doubt that proof that we knew exactly what these were, exactly what they were carrying, probably within ounces of the amount of weight that they were carrying. and where they were coming from and where they were most likely headed to, that technology, eyes in the sky and the rest, is so far beyond what we were able to do in 1981. There's no doubt, just because we're not giving classified information to the public, that we know exactly what we're doing. So I just was a little bit taken aback. I'm a new listener to your show for the last 3 months. I'm a patrol officer. I'm driving around now as we speak. I listen to you every day. Some of the things you say, I very much agree. I love it when you go through your history. You're very knowledgeable. I just didn't agree with that particular statement. It would be no problem to prove to anybody.
I'm glad you called in and added this information. And my point was particularly on this, that based on what we're hearing from people within the Department of Defense, that they actually think that Hegseth is pushing this harder than they should. I don't disagree with you that the boats we bombed have been legitimate, but there have been concerns within the Pentagon that Hegseth is pushing them to do more than they should be doing, and that they are concerned they are inevitably going to be taking out someone who actually is innocent, based on what Hegseth is trying to get them to do. So my concern is Hegseth becomes a liability to the president if he pushes them too hard, too fast to move quicker than they're comfortable doing. Not that they can't be pushed, but just based on the concerns that are coming from the enlisted the enlisted and the officer rank right now that are whispering not to the New York Times and the Washington Post, but going to conservative outlets like Fox News and the Washington Times, which, by the way, I also think is notable. Remember, they're no longer in the Pentagon. So these have to be already existing sources that are comfortable going to conservative outlets that are saying the Secretary of Defense is trying to steer them to go further than they're comfortable going at the risk of killing innocent people. That if that happens, that's going to be something serious if the Democrats take back Congress. But my position remains that we should be blowing up the drug dealers and we should be treating them as enemy combatants and not as civilians who need to be prosecuted. Now,
I agree with it.
Don, I got to ask you a question. I got to ask you a question, and I don't want to get you in trouble. But so how many people do you pull over in a day in your patrol car?
I'm actually confined to a gated community that's a small city. So my priorities, believe it or not, are people that are here from out of state with expired tags, that type of thing. I'm almost a glorified Metro cop.
Okay.
Again, it's just a case where I'm actually glad with that, because I'm not handling the people that are speeding, and I don't have to put myself at risk for that type of situation.
So basically, you're the guy who pulls over the New Yorkers who have stayed well past their expiration date.
Absolutely. And we put a bumper sticker saying, take I-95 north and put a Canadian under each arm.
Yes, and also stay out of the left lane, New Yorkers, if you're not going to drive fast. Listen, thank you for listening. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for that, and thank you for your insight as well. That you were able to do that in the 1980s before we had this level of intelligence now is deeply impressive. And that you were involved in the Cuban situation. That's some impressive history in and of itself. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I sure hope you have a great weekend, Don. Thank you very much. Now, Charlie was right. Don was an excellent phone call, despite him saying nice things about Charlie. I want to talk to you guys for a minute. It's just a complete shift. And again, open line Friday here, but I don't want to, it is still my show though. So I probably I know more freely than I should give my cell phone number to longtime listeners of the show who have interacted with a long time, or email from my private email address. And I want to talk about two instances lately. One is a listener who listens, who emails, and we've interacted a lot in the past. And I notice that of late, every email is just angry and hostile about Donald Trump. In fact, that's the only interaction now. They're just venting about Trump. And if you need to vent about Donald Trump, okay. But this relates to the person with my cell phone. And I don't know how this person got my cell, and I had to be the one to give my cell phone to him. I don't remember the circumstances, and I've tried to go back, and there's not even like a texting history to recall how I know this person and how I gave them my cell phone. But there is a person who text messages me, and it's never checking in on me and my family, praying for anything like that. Like, there are a lot of listeners who I give my cell phone number to over time, and they're not even talking about politics. It's what do you think of the Braves? How's your family? What's this? Or here's the sort of car for your kid, and it's just interactive chats about life, not politics. And I've learned over time that the people who are my friends never talk about politics, and the people who are friends with the guy on the radio only talk about politics. And it's a big distinguishing thing that I have had to learn in my growth as a radio show host, that there are people who actually take an interest in me, Eric Erickson, guy with a wife and 2 kids who lives in Middle Georgia. And there's a group of people who really take an interest in the radio show guy and who talks politics and radio and all of that. And I really didn't think that I would be able to make meaningful friendships with people once my career exploded, that everybody would want to be friends with the guy on the radio. And actually, I've been very surprised. Some of my dearest, best friends are people I've met since I've been on the radio. The people who I hang out with and enjoy their company a lot. But there's one guy has my cell phone number, and again, I can't remember how. I just cannot remember it. And every message has been, I miss the old Eric Erickson who would stand up and speak out against Donald Trump. It's like, dude, are you not listening to me on the radio? I get hate from him. But lately it's been, I don't think Donald Trump is leaving the White House. Building this ballroom is proof he's staying past 2028. The other day he emailed me some tweet, a screenshot of a tweet. And it was from some progressive Twitter account, like legit progressive Twitter account, like socialist to somebody, literally socialist, in I think the username, about how clearly Donald Trump was building this ballroom because he intended to blow past 2028 and he would never leave the White House. And I said, why are you sending me a socialist, progressive, Trump-hating account about this stuff? You would not treat it seriously if it was MAGA Bob instead of Socialist Bob, whatever they said. So why are you treating this seriously? But the guy is he's convinced that Donald Trump wants to be a dictator and not leave office after January 20th of 2029. In fact, I got an email from a listener today who's upset. So Trump's not leaving office. He's not leaving office. Donald Trump is leaving office January 20th of 2029. Steve Bannon is driving people insane, suggesting that Donald Trump is going to stick around. He's not. I see there's a Daily Beast story out about Steve Bannon and Donald Trump's secret plan to stay. I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. I believe the Constitution works. I believe the Constitution is stronger than any one man. And what all of the people who I think, in my mind, abuse the relationship they have with me to drop on me their phobias, hysterias, and neuroses about Donald Trump is they don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe the nation is good enough or strong enough to withstand a man. They're disappointed he won. And like with the Democrats who are so freaked out and furious about Donald Trump winning, your alternative mattered. And if you were that committed to the fact that Donald Trump was going to be a dictator, you should have worked very hard to push Joe Biden out of office and Kamala Harris out of office and provide a better alternative. And many of these people, they didn't do that. And they don't need to be mad at Donald Trump. Be mad at the Democrats who didn't even want to have an open primary process when they all knew, now we know in hindsight, that Joe Biden had dementia. Every single one of them has now come forward and essentially admitting, oh, yeah, it was a cover-up. We knew all along. If you think that the Constitution of the United States is not powerful enough to restrain this man, that the institutions of government are not powerful enough, work to make them more powerful. But this bat poop crazy idea that Donald Trump is a dictator. He's never leaving office. January 20th, 2029 is eventually going to get here, and Trump is going to leave office on that day, if not sooner for health or other reasons. God forbid something bad happens to him. You should pray for the president, by the way. The Bible tells you to. He's going to go away. And I wish I could just tell these people and reassure them, just calm down. You got 3 more years of this stuff. You people are already losing your hair over this. You've got 3 more years of Donald Trump, and then you're going to be rid of him. And you know what you're going to do is you're going to hate the next guy even more, because that's what always happens. You find strange new respect for Donald Trump and hate the next guy more. Life is too short to be so worked up about things that aren't going to happen, and yet you people are so convinced of them. When you get there, you're not going to breathe a sigh of relief. You're going to be too balled up with anxiety to ever find relief by that point. Just calm down. Life's too short to be that worried about something that's not going to happen. Y'all, I have been waiting to tell you about Cove Pure. I'm so excited. So, I moved my radio show and podcast out of my house to a studio, and I'm in a big corporate building, and you don't really trust the water out of the pipes. Cove Pure is the fix. They've got Clearwave technology. It removes 99.9% of contaminants, lead, PFAs, pharmaceuticals, you name it. I've got one in my office, and I finally have stopped buying bottles of water thanks to Cove Pure. There's no need to call a plumber or drill any holes. I was able to do it. You just plug it in on your countertop. You set the temperature you want on the touchscreen. It tastes like water. That is, it doesn't have a taste. It's fantastic. Take back control of your family's health and drink water the way it's meant to be. Go to covepure.com/Eric right now. Get $200 off while supplies last. That's covepure.com/ERICK. covepure.com/Eric. Get $200 off. covepure.com/Eric. Y'all, I don't have time to take phone calls here, so just be patient with me. But I got to tell you, so my son is at school. He will be home in 45. I'll be home in about an hour. It'll take him a little while to get home. He has a new car in the driveway with a big red bow waiting on it for him. Listen, I'm not one of those Lexus season to remember people. I mean, what the hell, people? You go out and you buy your wife a super luxury vehicle. You don't have the money. You leave it in the driveway with a giant bow on it, and she comes outside and is excited, as opposed to furious that you bought her a car without consulting with her on what she actually wanted. And maybe she didn't want the Lexus. Maybe she wanted the Mercedes. It's really those ads have always made me laugh. The husband's so excited. If I went out and bought my wife a Lexus that she hadn't even test driven and put a giant bow on it and made her go outside of the snow to see the car she never wanted in the driveway as if it's something, she would probably shoot me. As for my son, I know he wants this vehicle. And I gotta say, for anyone who knows the Jim Ellis folks, I bought my car from there. It's a big dealership in the Atlanta area, and in an ad for them, I just want y'all to know it was the most pleasant car buying experience I've ever had. And they delivered the car, because they're about an hour and a half from where I live, and they delivered it to me today. It is in my driveway, and I've wanted nothing but to call the school and get my son out of school and make him come home, and I've resisted the urge, and I can't wait for him to see it. It's going to be a fun weekend, I hope. I'm a little scared he's going to get excited and hit the accelerator and plow his mother's car into the new car. All right, I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. If you go to afpvolunteer.com, you can sign up with them. They lead a grassroots operation around the country. In all 50 states, they advance common sense conservative reforms, and they'd love to have you with them. afpvolunteer.com is the website, afpvolunteer.com. And my gosh, they have advanced school choice. In fact, they were instrumental in helping Georgia get school choice passed, and Texas and Oklahoma. They have been involved in the president's tax plan and getting taxes cut. And if you just want to be really informed about public policy and conservative ideas to advance public policy, from healthcare to immigration to taxes, all you have to do is go to afpvolunteer.com and sign up. And you don't have to knock on a single door or talk to anyone. You just get informed. But if you want to get informed and talk to people and persuade people, they'll teach you the skill set to be able to do that, to put boots on the ground, to fight for freedom. afpvolunteer.com. afpvolunteer.com. Sign up with Americans for Prosperity today. Hello. It's Eric Erickson here. Glad to have you with me. The phone number, this open line Friday, 877-973-7425. And look, I want you to know for the record, I love you people. I really do. I just had a funny email exchange with another listener who has my cell phone number. How I've got it, but I promise not to use it except to tell you you're wrong. I enjoy all of you. And even on Open Line Fridays, I normally do not take as many phone calls as I've taken today. But last Friday, we couldn't do it because a certain call screener was killing deer. And I haven't been able to several times this week because of how I've had to do the show. And so I wanted to make it up to you guys and take your phone calls today. And we've actually pleasantly had a lot of calls. I got to tell you guys, though, we have an occasional situation where someone calls and thinks they have a worthy point and they don't. And clearly no one has ever loved the person enough to tell them they're an idiot until they meet my call screener who loves them dearly and tells them the truth and hangs up on them. And then they just call back and he hangs up and calls back and calls back and calls back. And the other day we had someone who went through the situation who clearly no one has ever told this person in their lives no. Until they met my call screener. They sat on hold for 2 hours. It was like 2 hours and 30 minutes. And you would, just as a rule of thumb, if you've been on hold, and by the way, Mark, I want to tell you, I'm coming to you next. You've been on hold for almost an hour, and I'm sorry, and I am coming to you. I'm not talking about you. But rule of thumb, people, if you've been on hold for an hour and a half on this program, you're probably not getting on the show. And you should probably take the hint. My call screener's job is to make me look good, not you look good. And that means we let on people like Don, the police officer, former Coast Guard guy, who can actually add value to the conversation, as opposed to you, who are an idiot who has never been taken seriously in your life and you think you are entitled to be on a radio show. So just take that clue. If you've made it on, you've made it past my call screener, you're golden. Sometimes I can't get to every call, though. And don't take offense, because there's a lot happening. Today, actually, it's kind of a slow news day, and I am able to take a few more calls, and I feel like I should, since I haven't been able to take a lot of calls this week. A lot of program directors, by the way, would prefer me not to take any phone calls. But I like having people around the country listen. My goal's been to have a national show, and now I get calls from Connecticut and California and everywhere. I like to have them. You do need to know this breaking news item. I mentioned it before, the Wall Street Journal. This just dropped from them as well. The Pentagon is sending the USS Gerald Ford to the Caribbean, moving it out of the Mediterranean. This will be the first time that the Middle East theater has not had an aircraft carrier available. All the aircraft carriers are deployed elsewhere around the world right now. This one headed to the Caribbean. You got a submarine and an entire carrier fleet now in the Caribbean. It's a major escalation down there. This is happening today. The USS Gerald Ford is still in the Mediterranean, but is now heading to the Caribbean. Now, I'm going to take Mark's phone call, which Charlie tells me is kind of local, but worth it for the day. Mark, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Eric. How are you? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I did read something kind of funny yesterday, and I think it's something that I think should teach everybody something, and I'd never seen such an example, which was so clear. But, in the downtown connector, the interstate running through downtown, because not everybody here is from Georgia, there's a project called The Stitch, which is going to build a series of parks to cover up the interstate, to connect all the neighborhoods that were split when it was built. And pretty expensive project, but there was last year, there was a $150 million grant from the Federal Department of Transportation to help build it. And then when the House changed, when Mr. Trump was elected, the new House actually backed it out to just $6 million. So almost zeroed the whole grant out. But the city's still going forward. And when I was reading a story from CBS News Atlanta yesterday, it said that, they're going forward with it, and the mayor of the city have been able to find somewhere, had put together $50 million in funding. So I'm reading that thinking, wait, we started out with $150 million, goes down to $6 million. The city finds $50 million going forward. So we lose $144 million, gain $50 million. What was the $94 million for? I mean, when you think of fresh water fraud, waste, and abuse in federal spending, I'm looking at that saying, yeah, you know what? It really is true sometimes. I mean, what was going on? 150 million gone, replaced by 50, and the thing still gets built. That was crazy.
Okay. So, and Mark, there's a perfect tie-in for those of you listening up in Boston, of which I have a number of listeners up in Boston. If you recall the Big Dig project, and this was a national news story, it was out of Boston, but national news, where they did this mega project in Boston to reroute an elevated Interstate 93 into a tunnel that would go underground, and they were going to build a big green space on top of it. And they wound up doing most of the project. They canceled part of it, but it went on like 2 decades beyond what it was supposed to do. It went from being a $2.8 billion project to a $20 billion project. It lasted forever and forever and forever. Those of you familiar up in New England and even in Connecticut, I'm sure you guys know the Big Dig project in Boston that took forever to build, went more than 100% over cost. It was insane. Supposed to be completed in 1998, and it was not. It was well past that. It was concluded in the year 2007. They started it in 1982, for perspective. In Georgia now, there's this road called the Downtown Connector, and it's the combination of I-85 and I-75 through the middle of Atlanta, Georgia. There is a plan to essentially bridge over it and turn the above ground area into green space that connects neighborhoods that were once divided. In fact, I've been a long advocate of part of this project because the Georgia state capitol is locked by this interstate. There's not a lot of space to do things, and you build a nice greenway across this part of the interstate. Suddenly you can do things on the backside of Georgia's Capitol, much like the U.S. Capitol, where you have the presidential inauguration stuff. You do it outside, you have people, you shoot fireworks, you got more space. Well, thanks to John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock voting to shut down the government is canceling some of the money that would otherwise go to Georgia's version of the Big Dig, except it's like the big bridge build. And it's not going to happen because Warnock and Ossoff, they're not going to get that money. So the local government's trying to find other money. And every dollar they find to do this thing is not going to go to something else that probably is useful. We'll see how it works out for them. That reminds me, I mentioned this the other day. So Raphael Warnock is the senator from Georgia. Gulfstream is a major player in private aviation. If I ever got a private jet, the Gulfstream's nice, but the Cessna Longitude, I actually really like. It's cheaper and it's easier to fix. It costs less to fix. I like the Cessna Longitude. Not that I'm ever going to be in a position to buy one, but Gulfstream provides jets for the federal government. And 2 jets are going to Homeland Security. And you've probably heard the way the media has covered these is that there are 2 private planes for Kristi Noem. That's not actually true. They're for the Department of Homeland Security. They're not for Kristi Noem. And they replace existing Gulfstream planes that are dated and need to be updated. They would need to be updated regardless of who the president was. But, whenever Donald Trump does something, the media implies that it's for waste, fraud, abuse, greed, graft, corruption, all that sort of stuff. Not true. They actually have a need to replace 2 existing old airplanes that are having continuous maintenance problems. They chose Gulfstream to replace the 2 jets that actually are Gulfstream jets with newer models that can fly further, use less gas, much more efficient. And it's somewhat turned into a scandal because it's Kristi Noem and it's Donald Trump, and who cares what the facts actually are. And Raphael Warnock is the senator from Georgia who released a statement condemning the purchase of the planes that are made in Savannah, Georgia, by people who are residents of Georgia that you and I would call voters. It's one of the dumbest things I think I've seen from a politician. You're going to oppose the creation of jobs in your state to own the president of the United States. It's one of the stupidest positions for a politician to take. It's like the senator from California hoping the Dodgers lose the World Series. It's that stupid. It was such a dumb thing for Warnock to have done. Now, back to the phones. John, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, Eric. How you doing?
Good.
I can attest to being hung up on Philip in mid-sentence while talking to him. So,
Charlie, not Philip.
I'm sorry?
It's Charlie, not Philip. Philip doesn't hang up with people. He never answers the phone to begin with.
He hung up on me twice one day. Anyhow. My question was, since Russia invaded Ukraine, Finland became a member of NATO. Why did Russia not fight the idea of Finland becoming a member of NATO when they're fighting so hard with Ukraine to not be a member of NATO, since Finland borders Russia?
Okay. This is you guys who are calling today, John. Y'all are brilliant because you're making me look really good because I actually really do know the answers to these questions. You know, I went to law school to get a career in lying, so I can pretend I know answers when I don't, but I actually do know the answer to this. So here's why Russia did not get worked up about this. Finland historically is not considered part of Russia's sphere of influence. The Finns fought the Soviets and actually had a war with the Russians and killed a lot of Russians and have never been considered part of the Soviet sphere of influence. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, Sweden, which was a neutral country, and Finland, which was a neutral country, decided to join NATO in solidarity to show they're not going to be bullied by the Russians. The Russians are concerned about Ukraine joining NATO because Ukraine has always been a part of the Russian sphere of influence. When you go back to the Tsarist Russia, Catherine the Great invaded Ukrainian territory and took over Crimea because the Turks had invaded. And the Russians actually launched a defensive campaign with the Ukrainians to push the Turks out of Ukraine, but then went further and took Crimea for Russia. That's one reason I don't actually object to the Russians keeping Crimea, because going all the way back to the Russians, Crimea has specifically been within the Russian sphere of influence, but Ukraine itself has. And the reason Ukraine has been in the sphere of influence with the Russians is, where do the Russians come from? In part, they come from Ukraine. The Kievites, I think you call them Kievites, they moved north during the fall of the Roman Empire, waiting out the barbarians. As the Huns invaded, they moved north and took with them the Orthodox faith and the church, and carried it up to a small village called Moskova, which has become Moscow, intermarried into the culture. And so the Ukrainians and the Russians have always had these ties. Now, the Ukrainians have always viewed themselves as independent of, but cousins to the Russians. So when Stalin took them over and incorporated Ukraine into the Soviet Union, there's always been this natural resentment. And the reason for the current real resentment is because Stalin killed basically all of their grandparents and starved them to death. And the Ukrainians don't want to be part of Russia. They want to be their own people. Even Catherine the Great allowed Ukraine to have its own minor sphere of influence, much like Belarus has. The Belarusians have. And so the difference between Finland and Ukraine is that Finland has been at war with the Russians repeatedly through history. Ukraine was captured by the Soviets, has deep hostility to the Russians, but the Russians have always viewed the Ukrainians as part of their sphere of influence. Finland never was. Now, I will tell you this, something that does not get a lot of attention is that the Russians have been going into Finland in cover of darkness and sabotaging telecom lines and power plants and natural gas pipelines. And there have been almost a state of war in Finland since Finland joined NATO. And the NATO leadership has, by and large, just tried to ignore what the Russians are doing so they don't have to say the Russians have declared war. But the Russians have also been doing it in Norway and in Sweden. There have been lots of disruptions to telecom infrastructure, power infrastructure, internet infrastructure, and they know it's Russian sabotage, but no one wants to say it because then that would provoke Article 5 and you would have this cascading spillover war. And the Russians are essentially just trying to push and push and push and see what would trigger some larger fight. And I actually think it's been very wise for everyone to say, we're not going to recognize this as a hostile act. We're going to claim it's other stuff so that we don't have a massive land war in Europe with the Russians. But yes, I do know that answer. I'm glad you asked it. Hello, America. It is Eric Erickson here. Let's take one last call of the day. Shane, you're it. Welcome. How are you?
I'm well, Mr. Erickson. I hope you are, sir.
I am.
It's hard to believe it's been 10 years, but I can remember in 2015 when you famously and courageously uninvited Donald Trump to a red state event. And I can remember at that time thinking, wow, this man is standing on his convictions. And, a lot has changed in your life, I'm sure, in those 10 years. But I think we can say that it puts you on a more prominent footing in terms of influence around the country. And with that in mind, I just, you can't seem to buy a criticism of Trump in terms of us, Trump voting conservatives. I think if we know anything about Donald Trump, he's in touch with his sensitivities, and then I could argue he's shaped by those constructive and common sense based criticisms that come from people like you. And I think they're more important than ever. I think, if you take, for example, the groundbreaking of the White House construction zone, if nothing other than the optics, right, at a time when our country is in fact shut down, I would like to have seen that, the old punt for, hey, let's hold this off for 30 days, just for the optics of it, if nothing else. But it just, I don't know. I respect you highly. I think a lot of people do, but as conservatives, we can't all get in line with him on every single thing. I want to hear some more healthy, constructive criticisms from the administration.
Well, Shane, I'm rarely happy to criticize the administration, including earlier today on the overreach of Pete Hegseth on a number of things. But on the east wing of the White House, I think it's going to be a grotesque, gaudy monstrosity. But the president has the power to do it, and he's arranged for it to be done at no cost to the American taxpayer, so construction can begin. And I think instead of criticizing the man, I mean, we know who's contributing. They've been public with the donors, so you can see transparently who is giving money. And if they get sweetheart deals from the administration, you and I can cry foul over cronyism and bribery, but that doesn't appear to be happening. It's major American corporations funding it at no cost to the taxpayers. Even in the New York Times, the Democrats admit it's a needed project. Otherwise, the White House has to use tents and porta potties. So I'm just not that upset about this. I think just because the media wants me to be mad doesn't mean I have to be mad. I can discern what can and cannot be and what should and should not be. And this is something the president gets to do. It's his house. It's not our house. Now, we can clean the air with the Eden Pure Thunderstorm and get rid of the bad odors about it. EdenPureDeals.com is the website. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. You get 3 of them. You save $200. You get them for less than $200. EdenPureDeal.com is the website. ERIC3 is the discount code. They're air purifiers. Where I use them, how I use them is to eliminate odors. They generate ozone, which touches odor particles, which wipes them out. So since ozone is a gas, like the gases that are odors, it can go where they originate and touch them and wipe them out, neutralize the particles, and it works. You can plug it up with a USB cord. You can plug it directly into the wall. Get 3 of them, save $200, get them for less than $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3. ERICK3, no space, at EdenPureDeals.com. You guys have a great weekend. I'll talk to you Monday.